It repeals the 1972 European Communities Act. It means that the European Court of Justice no longer has sway in the United Kingdom. It means that the European Commission and the European Parliament no longer make laws for us. As of today, in our legal system, European law is supreme over UK law. The Great Repeal Act repeals that.
Well, except that what it does is it consolidates all existing European Union legislation into British law. So it would be more accurate to call it the Great Consolidation Act.
Well, no, because if you remember, Andrew, this is what I argued for during the Leave campaign. One of the things the Remain campaign said is you can't do it, it'll take years, we've got to redo all our legislation, it'll all be a disaster, can't be done. And my response then was what it is now. The best way to do this is to consolidate the existing legislation, much of which we want to keep. The environmental measures, there'll be elements of that we want to keep. The workers' rights measures, there'll be some of that we want to keep. So what we want to do is to make sure that we can give certainty before the event and after the event for workers, for businesses, about what the legal position will be. And then over time, we have the freedom outside the European Union, free from the control of the European Court, to change our legal system in the way that we want.
But it does mean we would leave the EU with all this EU law still part of British law. Now, what would you wish to change in the aftermath?
Well, there's a whole variety of different things we'd be looking at to change. But things like, for example, if you want a practical one, I think it's unlikely that after we've left the European Union that we'll still be paying child benefits to children who've never even entered the United Kingdom. That's the kind of thing we will be free to change after we've left.
Well,
but of course, there's much of what we'll want to keep. I mean, the environmental measures. Not all that's been done in the European Union over 40 years has been bad for Britain. Not all of the things that we've put into our law we will want to change.
How long will it take to unpick all this after we leave?
Well, it'll be down to the government to decide what its priorities are,
10 years?
what bits it wants to change, what bits it
20
doesn't
years?
want to change. Well, it'll take us as long as we choose to take it. But what's right and proper is that on the day after there is a degree of certainty for business. It would not be fair to a company that's operating under a set of rules for there to be a cliff edge where they don't know what's going to happen the day after. So let's make this an evolution, not a revolution, when it comes to the laws of the land in this country.
But a lot of things that you may have to agree to in the negotiations will mean that it will have to remain law even after we leave.
Well, it's clearly the case, Andrew, that if a business in this country is continuing to sell a product in the European Union, it will have to meet the standards of the European Union to do that, and so therefore those rules will apply. But that's the same today if we're selling to the United States. The rules of the United States would apply to a business that's planning to sell a product there.
What happens if you lose this vote?
Well, I think it's inconceivable that Parliament could look at the view of the British public and just ignore it. So I think we've got a clear mandate. Bear in mind that Parliament agreed overwhelmingly for the referendum to take place in the first place. The people have spoken. They've given us a mandate. I'm absolutely certain Parliament will fulfil that mandate.
What would happen? You have a majority of only 12. There was a majority for Remain in the Commons. I understand there's like a 6-to-1 majority for Remain in the Lords, and this will have to go through the Lords as well. If the Parliament does not seamlessly agree for what you're calling the Great Repeal Act, what would happen?
Well, I believe that both houses of Parliament are full of Democrats, and those Democrats will respect the will of the people. So I think you're talking about hypotheticals, of course.
Yeah, but you could be faced with a constitutional crisis if Parliament thwarts you, could you not?
Well, we've taken the decision to leave the European Union. Parliament's voted for the referendum. The people have spoken. It's inconceivable that Parliament would not somehow allow that process to go forward.
If the inconceivable happened, you'd have to call an election, wouldn't you?
Well, I think if inconceivable is probably a bit of a stretch, really.
Well, except that you say it's inconceivable. There are plenty of voices, particularly in the Lords, will use this to attempt to thwart you. You know that.
Well, it's not a question of thwarting us. It's a question of saying to the British public, we accept your verdict and we will implement it. And that's what we're doing. And I don't believe any Democrat in Parliament would somehow turn around and say, we should not fulfil that. Of course, there may be some dissenting voices, but the overwhelming number of members of Parliament and peers will view this as a democratic mandate that we have to fulfil.
You're a former leader of the House. Has your party done soundings in the Commons to make sure that you can get this through?
Well, of course, I've not been leader of the House really since the referendum, so I've not been involved in that discussion. But Parliament will reflect and respond to the will of the people. That's the way our country works.
Well, that's what you hope. We shall see at the time. On the timetable now that we know that the Article 50 will be triggered, say, by the end of March, the Prime Minister telling us that this morning, which means on that timetable we're out by Easter of 2019. Can you confirm this morning that means then that those British members of the European Parliament who are currently in Strasbourg, that's the final? There will be no more British MEPs after this?
Well, if we've left by the end of the two-year period, I mean, it is technically possible to extend it, though I don't think anybody will want to. Of course, at the end of that period, our MEPs cease to be MEPs, and so there wouldn't be MEPs after that point in 2019.
Let me look. We still don't know about the substance of Brexit, but let me just try and get a few things clear. For Brexit to mean Brexit, Mrs. May's famous phrase, which is basically just a tautology, it would mean the freedom to do our own trade laws, our own trade agreements. Do you agree with that?
Well, we've been very clear in saying we want to forge new trading ties around the world.
Right. So it would mean the ability to do that, our own agreements.
But where you're leading me, Andrew, is to ask me questions about the specific legal structures.
No, bear with me. Just a simple answer would do. Brexit, to mean Brexit, means we do our own free trade deals, correct?
That's correct.
For Brexit to mean Brexit, it would mean we were no longer subject to the rulings of the European Court of Justice.
That's also correct, yes.
And for Brexit to mean Brexit, it would mean that we would have whatever control we desired over immigration from the EU.
Well, we've been very clear, and the Prime Minister's been very clear, that we have to have control over the flow of people into the country.
Right. So, any one of these things counts us out from being a member of the single market. So can we agree this morning that all three together means there is no way we can remain a member of the single market?
Well, first of all, there is no such thing as a member of the single market. There are a number of different organisations that have different trading relationships within Europe, whether as part of a customs union, whether as part of the European Economic Area, whether as part of the European Union.
We're effectively a member of the single market now, but we can't be after this.
But the point I'd make to you, Andrew, is the question I think you asked me and others have asked me during the referendum campaign: do we want to be Norway? Do we want to be Switzerland? Do we want to be Canada when it comes to our trading arrangements? We want to be the United Kingdom. We are the biggest customer of German car makers, French farmers.
I know that. I don't want to refight the referendum again. I'm just trying for you, because it just seems plain as black or as white as white, that if you want all of that, we cannot be a member. We can have access to the single market on terms yet to be agreed. We'll have a relationship. But why cannot you say, of course we won't be a member in the way we are currently a member of the single market?
Well, we won't be a member of the European Union, but there is no such thing as a membership of the single market. The single market is a fairly nebulous entity with different elements to it. There is actually no single market in services, for example. Single market.
Well, there is, but it's just not as developed as goods.
And where we will end up with is, I believe, a trading partnership with the European Union on terms to be agreed that will work for both of us, because it's in their interest to do that.
Which will be access, but not membership as at the moment. You cannot be a fully paid-up member of the single market without the European Court of Justice ruling on it, and you don't want that. So I don't understand your problem.
But then you're prejudging the outcome of the negotiation. I don't know for certain where we'll end up. What I do know is that our goal should be and is to have the best possible partner, the best possible working arrangement, the best possible trading arrangement with our European neighbours. And that's what we'll work towards. And we're different to the other countries that have been involved in these discussions in the past. We're the fifth biggest economy. We're a major part of the European
we heard all
economy.
that during the referendum. I'm just trying to get some clarity on what it might actually mean.